Hello guys and gals, me Mudahar, and it's your favorite deep web virus investigations commentary. Actually, I honestly don't even know at this point. I mean, my whole channel's just a shit post. Of course, before we begin, I hope you all sub to a channel called Crypt Daddy. I just wanted to just bring up attention to it. You know, smaller channels I definitely have a huge love for, and this guy really does deserve it. I actually watch his stuff, and he watches my stuff, so I figured, you know, it's always worth giving a little bit back and just shouting out people who really do deserve it. If you want to see some positivity in the fallout world of the YouTube landscape today, here's where it's at. But you know what's not positive? Getting my banking information stolen. Woohoo! That's going to be a fun time, let me tell you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this all sparked from an actual malware that's been floating around a couple days ago called ZLoader. If you don't know what ZLoader is, it's basically banking malware that's effectively designed to hijack your system and basically steal whatever saved information you have regarding financial services and sending them back to a server. Now, let's get into the story real quick. As you can see, on many news sites, they're actually putting up these email addresses that are being sent to individuals. Now, these emails, for instance, come from these organizations like, and they're sent unsolicited. Now, these emails basically tell you about avoid corona scam. Read, okay, dear customer, avoid corona scams. Here are some tips to help you keep the scammers at bay. Imagine a scam email telling you, do you want to see which emails are scammers? Scammers send spam emails in a bid to dupe the victims into thinking they can order face masks that will keep them safe from the novel virus. What happens instead is that the victims will unwittingly reveal their sensitive personal and financial information to the fraudsters. I mean, wow, what a kind message. It's always a kind message until they give you a link that actually leads you to a pretty bad download, one that we'll get to. Here's another email for all of us Canadians, okay? So ladies and gentlemen, this one is a COVID-19 relief, and they give you a document too. We're gonna look at a spreadsheet. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau approved an immediate check of 2,500 Canadian. That's about 32 cents US for you Americans down there, you know? For those who choose to stay at home during the coronavirus crisis, here's the form of the request. Please fill it out and submit it no later than 25/03/2020. Password is 1234. Imagine the Canadian government giving out an actual document like this when the password is just 1234. Ooh, I think I'm a little on the dark side. Let me turn on the light. Now, here I'm setting up a virtual machine, a Windows 10 virtual machine, and you may be wondering, ooh, Mood is getting the internet condom ready? Well, damn straight I'm getting it ready. Now, if we take just a second back, all right, while this is rebooting, let's just revisit the last time we covered something like this. It was very similar. We downloaded an Excel spreadsheet that would launch macro programs, and in that video we looked around, you know, for these macro programs. We ended up finding them. We ended up spotting differences in between two VMs. We ran it in parallel. Here, it's actually a little bit more intense. You know, this is something that does a good job of trying to cover its tracks, but it's not perfect. And with that said, all right, it's going to be a situation where I launch this, we're going to quickly check it, and we're going to find out where it's trying to connect to. We know that the malware we have is going to try and connect to some weird server. So that being said, let's sit back and just launch this up and see what we can do. So when you scan this with Windows Defender, all right, one thing that'll tell you is, woo, we got a little Trojan downloader, don't we? Now it's given a threat of severe, and it's already removed it. But ladies and gentlemen, if you can just see the C details real quick, and I'll show you what it is. It's actually just, it's this sample right now. It's a Trojan downloader. Again, it's a full-on severe hit to you. Now, let's try running this. Again, going back to the previous video, to run this, we're going to need a copy of Microsoft Excel, and it's going to need to allow things like macros. And we're going to need to turn all those protections that would normally be on off like we did before. But that being said, let's get all that done and just launch this. Now, this is where the disclaimer is. I don't actually have my bank account signed in the VM. That should be pretty obvious. The reason for that is that would be pretty dumb, even by my standards. So I'm not going to sign into any of my bank accounts. I'm not going to sign into any bank accounts. I'm not even going to sign into a fake bank account. I'm not even going to sign into like a Fisher Price bank account. because whatever we're going to launch here could have the potential ability to just jack it right now, even if we're in a VM. Again, if I sign under the VM, it's just going to take whatever's in the virtual machine and send it off if I store those passwords or whatever other attack pattern it has in this case. Now, going to hybrid analysis, which is a tool that I've used numerous times during this series to basically scan for this type of malware, what you have to understand is this has an AV detection of 14%, meaning right now, people aren't picking this up. This is a malware that's floating around. Now, this is why like Windows Defender is a good antivirus in my opinion, because it'll usually pick apart all the dangerous stuff already. Microsoft does a good job updating its security intelligence. But as you can see over here, 20% of all these malwares, or 23% according to Virus Total, of all their like antivirus engines are just picking this up, meaning that if you were to use something that wasn't picking it up, well, we'd run into some problems. Hell, one system right here straight gives it the clean rating, and it's not clean. Because when you go down into it, hybrid analysis will also check this program for you, and it'll give you a lot of indicators as to what is shady and what isn't. So just to give you some screenshots of what happens, when you open up this spreadsheet, you basically get this JPEG image that says, to view this content, please click Enable Editing from the yellow bar, and then click Enable Content. Now, what's going to happen is if I allow it, if I let it run that content, remember before, what's happening here is it has a bunch of instructions within the spreadsheet, and by allowing it to execute those instructions, it's going to run a daisy chain of operations that eventually get me to connect to a command and control server. So that's what's going on. Now, in the case of this program, what I had to do was I had to set the date back to like May 7th, May 4th. I had to keep going back. Once I touched a specific date, this actual program could launch its payload. It could launch its set of instructions. I believe it's actually based on a certain date. And as May 4th, May 7th has already passed, luckily this malware is not active. But that doesn't mean that we can't trace it back to whoever was originally trying to run it. And let's do that. Okay, so this is where like it gets really interesting, okay? This is where we're gonna find out where this ends up leading back to. Now, last time we did this, we actually were capturing our network packets to basically analyze every IP address that we were actually reaching out to. Now, what I've done over here is for the virtual machine, I ended up giving it its own network adapter. This is a pretty simple like USB to like Ethernet adapter. And the reason why I've done this is so I'm going to pass its own network adapter to the virtual machine, meaning that it believes that it's on its own system, it's got its own little network adapter, all that good stuff. I connect this to an actual different computer, in this case my laptop, where it's a totally separate system, and all I'm doing is I'm capturing the network data from this device that passes on to that. That's all I'm doing, all right? So basically that's the capture device that I have, my laptop in this case. And there's some interesting findings to have over here. Now, for the most part, the IP addresses that I was hitting in this case was actually from like Microsoft, specifically towards the Azure system that they have. And I believed a lot of this was actually because of Windows 10's like basic services. But then I got to an interesting IP, all right? This is where the real fun stuff is. Now, eventually, all right, digging enough into the network packets, one weird name came out, one out of a couple actually. And I looked at maybe 4 or 5 different samples. This one was something that I found. This is shetkarimarket.com. Connection, keep alive. All right, we're getting to the weird stuff. What is Shetkari Market? So at this point, we just did a whois search, right, where we looked up who this domain belongs to. Shetkari Market, okay, GoDaddy is where this originally was from. Then you get into like where the registrant country is, which is India. And then the state is Maharashtra, okay? All right, so this is one of the provinces of India, a big one. All right, so why is it that as soon as I was running this, I was starting to hit an Indian server, something that belonged to Shetkari Market? So this is when I went to the Wayback Machine, and it took me to this place. We are getting ready for launch. Watch this space. The logically wise people from LogicOI Systems Private Limited are designing and developing the playground for the Shetkari Market. And as you can see, bro, it's done. It's over. There's nothing. It's only one page, and there was nothing to be found out of here. So somehow I was connecting to this server. Now, if you go to Shetkari Market right now, you know that I can't connect to the actual Shetkari Market because it's a 403 forbidden. It's just not here. I don't have permission to access anything here. And it's here where I looked up what Shetkari Market actually is. And it's apparently a full private limited company in India right now. And if I look even further than it, yeah, it does in fact look like a real store. So whether these guys' servers were actually hacked and utilized, I mean, their date of incorporation is 2009. I'm not going to say that this Shitkari Market is a lie, because honestly, Shitkari Market might actually be taken over one of their domain addresses, because whatever was launching out of that scam Excel spreadsheet was leading back to their domain. I don't know if it was hijacked, I don't know what was going on, but this literally happened this month. So whatever operation was running is dead. Like, it's not active. The payload will not launch. You cannot connect to a CNC server to get further instructions. But wherever it was leading to was their domain address. So whoever Shitkari Market actually is, whoever is behind it, needs to start looking into their system to make sure nothing is compromised on their end. It wouldn't be out of the ordinary. But we found out that we're leading back here. Now, it's interesting that when I went to like the site called Inquest, they actually posted this in their blog, and they had the same sort of sample. One of the samples I actually did check from here, and it also did lead to Shitkari Market. Same thing that they actually led to, if I can just find it for you real quickly. Shitkari Market. So they actually ended up going to, in fact, a similar IP. I believe the IP that I went to was just a little bit different. I'm not sure. Maybe it was the same one. I have no clue. Might actually be the same one. It looks like the same one. I mean, maybe the 148 might be slightly different. But they actually touched upon Shitkari Market too. So they got something going on with that. So obviously, it wasn't just a luck of the draw type deal. I wouldn't expect it to be. They're hitting it, I'm hitting it, and I'm sure other people who are researching this are also hitting that same exact IP address. Now, to also lead more credence to what's going on, here's an article that was published May 20, an actual blog post by Proofpoint, another security research team, that actually looked even further into this, and they found out that this was active again since 2019. This isn't new, but as you can see, new versions keep popping up. Now, what makes this really important, and they actually made a good point over here, is that it is one of these malwares that actually is pretty intelligent. Whoever it was designed by isn't exactly completely dumb. Here they actually have anti-analysis code going in. So if you look over here, you can see that this is basically a function to get the malware version. So as you can see, one of these values, or one of these functions, return value, okay, it basically returns a double word, okay, data value. It basically returns that data value to give you a version number. But if you look even further at this code, a lot of the code right here is actually junk or garbage code. And the reason for it is that as an investigator, as an analyst on this, you would look into this code, and it would basically be there to try and confuse you, or try to basically guide you astray when analyzing it. It's what we call obfuscation, and this is just one of many portions where you see tons of junk code. So whatever is built over here is actually, it's not some dumb script kiddie type nonsense. Banking malware, I am not going to wager that what we actually tried launching here must have stolen thousands, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in this case, because this has been active for a while and it keeps coming back even stronger than before. So effectively, here I can even see that they're hitting maybe a different URL at this point. So let's talk about what happens had this malware ran, right? Just a final closing thing. Had this ran on my computer, what would happen is it would web inject into basically all of the browsers that I have. It would hijack and steal as much personal information as it can and send it over. It would have a specific target. Now, again, given all of that, you have to follow some basic practices, which is why I say never save your stuff and always try to use a virtual machine. I sound like a psycho guy when I tell you every time use a VM. And the reality of it is, guys, when you're using a virtual machine, okay, most modern day computers can handle a VM, okay? It doesn't have to be super fancy. Get VMware, get VirtualBox. And the reality of why I tell you that is, let's say you're browsing the web, right? You should probably never click on a weird link. If you open up your email, you should probably never download an attachment. This is basic information that I'm telling you. But the thing that gets me the most, the thing that burns me the most about this, is people still break that common rule. They still break that. And so when you have a virtual machine, let's say that you're browsing the internet on a virtual machine, clicking a shady link isn't going to cause you much harm. Provided you're not putting shared folders in your VM or you're not bridging networks, you'll be fine for the most part, okay? Very, very few cases of VM busting code is going to launch, and it's going to be a rare case. It's not eliminated, but it's going to be rare. So when you have a VM, you're probably going to be browsing, and let's say you open up a shady site. Let's say you open up a trustworthy site, and it might be exploited at that given moment. You'll still be relatively safe, because if you're going to handle sensitive stuff like medical knowledge, financial knowledge on your computer. Separating it to your host system is better, and you can do the rest under a virtual machine where you can contain any threat within it. Because if a virtual machine gets infected, just ice it and start up a new one. That's all you really have to do. I basically launched a program that was intentionally designed to steal banking information from me. All right. Now, I didn't do it because the payload was just never there. We were a little late on the draw, thank Lord for that. But this kind of email is running around. This kind of scam is flying all over. So if you see it in your inbox, if your parents see it in their inbox, if like your grandparents see it in their inbox, anybody you know who doesn't know anything about computers sees this in their inboxes, make sure to click away and stay away, because you could potentially have your banking information and maybe even a lot more stolen because of it. That being said, I'm going to leave the links to some of these like white papers that I looked at in the description below, so you can get a little bit more of an idea. You can learn on your own. That being said, if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it.